Before we begin though, did you know that a parliamentary term is divided into sessions by legislative year? The agenda is as follows. The Public Procurement International Finance Corporation Advisory Services National Broadband Network Project Order 2023 resolution is to be taken. And motion to amend the standing orders to include the terms of reference for the Caucus of Women Parliamentarians is to be taken. That's what's on the agenda. It should be noted that elements of the day's agenda can be changed or moved. But before we go, here are a few things you should bear in mind if you are planning to attend a session at Gordon House. No visitor shall create any act of disorder within the precincts of the House. No visitor shall be admitted to the House without first obtaining an admission card. Visitors who remain within the precincts of the House during a suspension of the session are asked to keep silent. No photography, videography, or sketching of the proceedings is allowed, unless so authorized by the presiding officer. And there should be no smoking inside the parliamentary building. Here are a few more interesting facts about the Houses of Parliament. Prorogation signals the end of the session of Parliament. The life or term of Parliament is 5 years, but it may be terminated earlier if a general election is called. Dissolution signals the end of the parliamentary term. When the Parliament is dissolved, all matters before it are terminated and all members vacate their seats. However, Cabinet ministers continue to carry out their functions until a new cabinet is named. Let's talk about parliamentary protocol. Parliamentary protocol requires that members observe certain rules, among which are the following. Members shall be present in the House for a few minutes before the scheduled time of commencement of a sitting. Members shall cease all conversation and rise in their places when the Marshal announces the arrival of the presiding officer. Members shall bow to the presiding officer on entering and leaving the chamber. Members shall at all time address the presiding officer or in committee the chairman. Members shall not sit or stand with their backs towards the presiding officer. Now over to the proceedings.
Limited for the financial year 2020-2021. Annual report on audited financial statement of the National Environment and Planning Agency for the year 2012-2013. Ministry paper number 61 of 2023 entitled Annual Report of the National Environment and Planning Agency for the year 2012-2013. Ministry papers numbers 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, and 68 of 2023 entitled with respect to the law reform zones of special operations, special security and community development measures, social intervention for April 14, 2023 to June 15, 2023, dated June 15, 2023, with respect to August Town, Greenwich Town, Denham Town, Norwood, Parade Gardens, Savalanamar, Mount Salem, respectively. Ministry paper number 69 of 2023 entitled Job Description of Ministers of Government, dated June 20, 2023. Green paper number 3 of 2023 entitled Job Description for Members of Parliament of Jamaica, dated June 20, 2023. The law reform zones of special operations, special security and community development measures under the law reform zones of special operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures Act 2017 in respect of the Savalanamar Zone, the Denham Town Community Zone, the Greenwich Town Zone, the Mount Salem Community and environs in the Parish of St. James Zone, the Parade Gardens Zone, the Norwood Community in the Parish of St. James Zone, and the Augustown Zone, with extension of period of operation number 3, order 2023, respectively, along with their respective resolutions. The Bauxite and Alumina Industries Encouragement Relevant Concession Period Order 2023 under the Bauxite and Alumina Industries Encouragement Act and its resolution. The Electronic Vehicle Policy dated June 2023. The Civil Service Establishment General Amendment Order 2023 under the Civil Service Establishment Act, along with its resolution. The Jamaica Gazette Supplement, Proclamations, Rules and Regulations, Volume 146, Number 142, dated Thursday, June 22, 2023, Proclamation Number 13 of 2023 under the Constitution of Jamaica. And the Jamaica Gazette Supplement, Proclamations, Rules and Regulations, Volume 146, Number 143, dated Thursday, June 22 of 2023, Number 194, enclosing the Emergency Powers Parish of St. James and Westmoreland Regulations 2023 under the Emergency Powers Act. The Energy Efficiency and Conservation Policy and Guidelines for Public Facilities, specifically for schools and hospitals. White Paper Number 2 of 2023, entitled The Government of Jamaica National Natural Disaster Risk Financing Policy, dated June 2023. The Integrity Commission's report of investigation concerning investigation into allegations of breaches of Corruption Prevention Act and Integrity Commission Act by the following employees of the Southeastern Regional Health Authority. And the Integrity Commission's indicative ruling concerning the investigations. Persons are Dr. Yvonne Monroe Whitemore, Dr. Monia Spencer, Dr. Trudian Johnson, Dr. Christopher Wilkes, and Dr. Keith Clark. Integrity Commission's report of investigation into corruption. Integrity Commission's report of investigation into concerns that former Senator Leslie Campbell failed to provide information requested by the Commission in respect of his statutory declarations and the submission of the indicative ruling regarding same. And the Integrity Commission's report of investigation concerning allegations of conflict of interest and irregularities in relation to the acquisition of shares in First Rock Capital Holding Limited by the Airport Authority of Jamaica and the Norman Manley International Airport Limited.
Mr. President, just seeking some clarification in light of your statement at our previous sitting. I don't know, the mic appears to be on. You hear me, Mr. President? No. Yes, just seeking clarification in terms of the announcements. The One that was referring to the report of investigation on the First Rock Capital Holdings Limited by the Airport Authority, etc. You had made a statement at the last sitting. You had indicated that you were seeking advice on it. And I would just like to know, is this a resubmission or is this the submission of the original report that you indicated to us that you held?
Thank you, Senator Bunting. The document which is being tabled today was the document, the original document that was passed to me in my capacity as President of the Senate. This is the original document. The date Yes, okay. Yes, the document was put into the registry and handed to me on the, let me tell you, 1st of May, I'm sorry, the 31st of May, 2023. This is a document. And I indicated at the time that there was a request from the Integrity Commission to have the document returned. I formed the view that my responsibility under the Act upon receipt of the document from the clerk is to table it. I was unable to find any legal authority for me to return the document, and the Integrity Commission did not provide me with any legal authority so to do. And I indicated on the last occasion that I would await further correspondence or further information, and that was not forthcoming at any point. So based on my analysis of the law, based on the failure of the Integrity Commission to provide a legal basis for me to return it, and based on the position of the legal officers of the Parliament, in the interest of clarity and transparency, it is tabled. If it is that the Integrity Commission wishes to alter, change, or to make a statement concerning that, then they are free to do so. The document which was served on the Parliament on the instruction of the Speaker in the exercise of her discretion was returned. But I felt that on my analysis of my responsibility under the law, I table it. If it is that they want to change it, they can do so by way of addendum, as the case may be.
Thank you very much for that clarification, Mr. President. And just in terms of the transparency that you referred to, could you just outline the process for us for when the Integrity Commission reports, or imagine any Commission of Parliament's reports, comes to the Parliament, and specifically in your case, to you as President of the Senate, that goes through. And I'm just saying that in light of the apparent disparity between release from the Integrity Commission, which says that they had sent 6 reports on the 20th of June to the Parliament, and I see here apparently, and I'm, I can't stand to be corrected. I don't know if the report on the medical officers of Southeast Regional Health Authority, whether they are 5 separate, they're treated as 5 separate. But I'm just trying to reconcile this statement. So I'm asking you to describe the process and the timing.
I can assist in relation to that. Each doctor was dealt with specifically and relates to their failure to file returns in 2016. Each of them is dealt with separately. When a document is sent here, it is received by the registry and a note made of its arrival in the Parliament. It goes from there to the clerk in relation to Integrity Commission matters. A copy is served on the Speaker of the House and on myself, and they are subsequently tabled. It is interesting, and I would certainly invite the commission that is looking into the procedures involved with the Integrity Commission, that although there is a practice that the matters are tabled at the earliest opportunity, that is the practice. There is nothing specific in the legislation that says so, although it says so in relation to other commissions of Parliament. But the practice is that they are tabled at the earliest possible time. Now, in relation to these 6 matters, these 5 matters, 5 doctors and former Senator Campbell, it generated some amount of public interest because the Commission put out something inquiring as to why they weren't tabled. And, you know, I cannot but assure that it was as a result not of any subterfuge, but just the processes by which it went through that caused it not to be tabled on Tuesday. But in the normal course of things, they would have been tabled on Tuesday.
I thank you for that clarification, Mr. President, and I'm sure the public is reassured. But this is why I just asked you to indulge all of us, for the benefit of the public, to just explain the processes that would cause it to not meet the next sitting of Parliament, but instead take 9 or 10 days to reach.
You know, as I said, it is a practice, and based on what was happening here, it is perhaps something that we need to look at in the legislation to say it should be tabled. The other commissions, I believe, say to be tabled at the earliest opportunity or with alacrity, as the case may be. The Integrity Commission will act silent on it. But in the normal course of things, the practice is that they are tabled as soon as possible.
President, just a clarification. The reports, normally you'd see accompanying the announcement the number of copies that are circulated. For example, just picking one out of the blue, the law reforms, zones of special operation, you'd see that the OPM has submitted 70 copies. Are we to understand that there are only 3 copies? Well, copy to you as President, copy to the Speaker, copy to the Clerk of the reports from the Integrity Commission. And secondly, I would expect, since they are laid on the table today, that we would have seen on the phones and copies of the reports. I have not yet seen those copies, so just checking when we're likely to see them.
Well, no doubt that will be done in what is referred to in the military as short order. But before we close, I just want to indicate that my position here in relation to this matter was not arrived at out of any pique or desire to create mischief. It is simply to say that I have not been provided with the legal basis on which a document which goes through the process of Parliament is presented to the President, who has a legal authority to table it. I was not presented with an legal position that say return is possible in the process. That's all. Thank you very much, Senator Bunting. Thank you, Senator Brown, for your intervention. Bills brought from the Honorable House of Representatives. Petitions. Papers. Reports from committees. Notices of motions given orally.
Mr. President, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the Senate, I will move. Be it resolved that notwithstanding Standing Orders number 66-3 and 73, this Honorable Senate appoints a sessional select committee comprising all the women who are members of this Honorable Senate to sit jointly with a similar committee to be appointed by the House of Representatives as the Caucus of Women Parliamentarians. Mr. President, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the Senate, I will move. Be it resolved with reference to the resolutions approved by this Honourable Senate on the 21st day of April 2023, appointing a joint select committee to review the Criminal Justice Administration Amendment Act 2023, that the name Dr. Sapphire Longmore be deleted and the name Mr. Charles Sinclair be substituted therefore, and be it resolved with reference to the resolutions approved by this Honourable Senate on the 21st day of April 2023, appointing a joint select committee to review the Offences Against the Person Amendment Act 2023, that the name Dr. Sapphire Longmore be deleted and the name Mr. Charles Sinclair be substituted therefore, and be it resolved with reference to the resolutions approved by this Honourable Senate on the 21st day of April 2023, appointing a joint select committee to review the Child Care and Protection Amendment Act 2023, that the name Dr. Sapphire Longmore be deleted and the name Mr. Charles Sinclair be substituted therefore. Mr. President, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will ask for the suspension of standing orders to permit me to take the motion, notice of which I have just given.
Thank you, Minister. Questions and answers to questions? Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice. Motions relating to the sitting of the Senate. Motions for leave to introduce bills. The presentation of bills without the leave of the Senate first obtained. Public business.
Thank you, Mr. President. I now move for suspension of the standing orders to allow me to take the motion, notice of which I gave earlier.
Members should have heard the question. Those in favor? Against?
Mr. President, I ask that the motion be approved.
Members should have heard the question. Those in favor? Aye. Against? Senator Golden Campbell.
Mr. President, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motion, notice of which I gave earlier.
Thank you. Members, those in favor? Against? Senator Golden.
Mr. President, I ask that the motion be approved.
You just recite the motion for me, please, quickly.
Be it resolved that notwithstanding Standing Orders number 66-3 and 73, this Honourable Senate appoints a sessional select committee comprising all the women who are members of this Honourable Senate to sit jointly with a similar committee to be appointed by the House of Representatives as a Caucus of Women Parliamentarians.
Thank you very much. Those in favour? Against?
I think the senator was trying to get your attention.
Yeah. I just want to get a clarification on this motion.
Hold on one second.
Okay.
Seat other than your own, I think.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I just wanted to get a little clarification here. Is it that this motion is being referred to the Standing Orders Committee for review and consideration?
Yes, yes, sir.
That is the intent?
Yes, sir.
Okay, because I am just seeing this motion in its outline for the first time today, and I would want to get the opportunity to review it a little closer based on some cursory glances that I've made at it.
Yes, thank you, Senator Morris. There's another motion coming right now to facilitate said reference to the Standing Orders Committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Mr. President, might I ask for the recommittal of the item on the agenda at notices of motions given orally?
Members would have heard the question. Those in favor? The item is recommitted.
Mr. President, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the Senate, I will move motion for the amendment of the standing orders of the Senate to include the terms of reference of the multi-party gender caucus. Whereas, on January 27, 2023, the Senate approved a resolution to refer to the Standing Orders Committee for consideration and report a motion to amend the standing orders to allow for a Caucus of Women Parliamentarians to be established as a sessional select committee to sit jointly with a similarly comprised committee from the House. And whereas, on that same day, the Standing Orders Committee reported to the Senate its agreement to amend the standing orders to include as a sessional select committee the Caucus of Women Parliamentarians. And whereas, the Caucus of Women Parliamentarians does not have a terms of reference in the standing orders giving effect to its constitution and duties. And whereas there is a need for an amendment to the standing orders to include the terms of reference for the Caucus of Women Parliamentarians, be it resolved that the standing orders be amended to incorporate the terms of reference for the Caucus of Women Parliamentarians, and be it resolved that this motion be referred to the Standing Orders Committee of the Senate, which shall consider and report on the following draft amendment with a view to effecting the change. Standing Order 78, the amendment. The Standing Orders is amended by inserting next after Standing Order 70 the following. 70A. The Caucus of Women Parliamentarians. 1. Notwithstanding the provisions of Standing Order number 66.3, Sessional Select Committees, and 73, Joint Select Committees, A. The Caucus of Women Parliamentarians shall consist of the female members of the Senate to sit jointly with female members of the House. B. The caucus shall elect its own chair. C. All women parliamentarians shall be deemed members unless they formally communicate a decision to the chairman to opt out of caucus participation. And D. The quorum of the caucus shall be such as the caucus may decide. 2. The Caucus of Women Parliamentarians shall have the duty of A. Reviewing legislation, plans and programs from a gender perspective to understand their effect on gender equality, equity and parity, and differential impacts on men and women and boys and girls. B. Receiving submissions from citizens and organizing meetings between citizens, community groups, sectoral organizations, members of parliament and representatives of government agencies to facilitate exchange of views on the operations of the government and their effect on communities and groups in the society. C. Raising awareness on gender equality, equity and parity, and the importance of women's leadership among all parliamentarians and parliamentary staff, as well as among the general public, including by raising the visibility of women leaders in society. D. Facilitating networking, building solidarity, and promoting constructive dialogue on issues of importance among women parliamentarians across party lines and chambers. E. Supporting capacity building across the Parliament in gender mainstreaming and gender responsive budgeting and costing, and to encourage the application of these tools in parliamentary work. F. Providing caucus members with professional development opportunities to further strengthen their leadership and their capacities to participate in the legislative process in a gender-responsive manner. G. Engaging in advocacy and lobbying on specific policy themes to be identified on a periodic basis in accordance with the national priorities. And H. Organizing meetings with relevant organizations in order to seek such information on their activities as the public interest may demand. And Mr. President, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motion.
Public business.
Mr. President, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motion, notice of which I gave earlier.
Thank you, Senator Golden Campbell. The question is that the standing orders be suspended to enable the minister to take the motion, notice of which she gave earlier. Those in favor? Against? So just to be clear on the process, the motion is to be debated, at the end of which it will be, the sitting of the Senate will be suspended, and we will go to the Standing Orders Committee, where it will be approved or not, and then reverted to the sitting of the Senate. Report will be sent to the sitting of the Senate. Thank you, Senator Golden Campbell. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I feel very privileged and honored to be asked to take this motion today. I have come in at a very late stage of the work that has been done to establish the bicameral Caucus of Women Parliamentarians, and I have learned a lot from my colleagues who were the pioneers in the effort to get us here today. I note when this motion was taken in the lower house, some of the comments made by our portfolio minister, Grange, the Prime Minister, and opposition colleague, Sister Angela Brown-Burke, all recognizing the levels of representation of women in this current parliament and the unprecedented numbers that we enjoy. And I also noted, Mr. President, the caution and the concern that some have expressed, not just in the House on that occasion, but when we first took this matter in January, here in the Senate, and also at an earlier time, I believe it was in the House, and the caution that the caucus must be a caucus of value, that it mustn't be a talk shop, that it must bring outcomes. And I had to sort of chuckle because I wondered if at the establishment of any other committee in our parliament, if such concerns were held or had held then about the value that would come from such committees. And I thought, we have to be cautious about a possible imbalance of our perspectives when we ask the question, what has a record number of women in the parliament achieved? Which is not to say, that there must not be value and there must not be an impact. But the thought and the caution and concerns underscore the need for a caucus like this to give focus to the issues facing women and to focus on the various legislative and policy initiatives that pass through this parliament, looking from a woman's gender lens, which will ultimately, that work and the work that this caucus will do will ultimately ensure that this apparent higher standard that has been set for measuring the impact of women where they are gathered in leadership roles, I'm confident, Mr. President, that this caucus will meet that standard with my colleagues on both sides of the House. Mr. President, I want to just highlight one of the amendments. Crave your indulgence. The amendment that speaks to, here we go. The amendment at what is the proposed 70A, subsection 2D, speaking to the duty of the women parliamentarians in facilitating networking, building solidarity, and promoting constructive dialogue on issues of importance among women parliamentarians across party lines and chambers. And I highlight that, Mr. President, because this caucus, because of its very bipartisan nature, on issues that are common to all of us, is most unique. And I highlight it because this caucus is one in which the strictures of party positions and the creeping in of sometimes divisive politics should have no place. But it's not expected, Mr. President, and I'm not naive enough to assume that we're going to have kumbaya times in every issue that we deliberate on together. But I do believe, and I feel very confident, having worked with my colleagues on the other side in the lead up to this in the last few months, that we are committed to collaboration in a respectful way. Many of my colleagues who were forefront at the efforts to bring this caucus into fruition have journeyed for a long time. And in the end days, in the establishment of this caucus, we have committed to set out on a journey to work to serve Jamaican people in a new way, in a way that puts our collaboration above partisan politics, in a way that says we are committed to rolling up our sleeves and to doing the hard work to find consensus on potentially difficult issues. We must work together. We must deliberate on issues that, though potentially difficult, require that we stay in the room. And we're not going to take up our marbles, Mr. President, and leave when we don't have unanimous agreement. This batch of women in the Parliament are all very forthright in their own way. And we will duke it out and we will argue it out, but we will seek the best solution for our Jamaican people, and one on which we can all get behind. Mr. President, I commit to doing my utmost, as I know all of us do. We will need, though, the support of our male counterparts. And we welcome their contributions, and we welcome their criticisms. And we welcome those, and I absolutely, Senator Floyd Morris, we welcome them in a spirit of openness and a spirit of respect. With the establishment of this caucus, Mr. President, I believe we're moving in the right direction to support and protect our families. You know, just this week I was watching in other places, and it's been going on for a little while, the stripping of legislative protections for women and the removal of systems that ensure equity and diversity. We are a nation that has a plethora of households led by women. And so it's appropriate, indeed timely, that this caucus comes into being at this time to provide leadership and to ensure that our legislative and policy initiatives at a national level are supportive of the issues facing our women-led homes and indeed all our families. Mr. President, I must recognize the efforts of Minister Olivia Babsy Grange and her team. I must recognize many of my women colleagues who were there in the early days, like Senator Sophia Longmore, former Senator Natalie Campbell Rodriguez, Angela Brown Burke, MP Angela Brown Burke, and Senator Donna Scott Motley, who I think is online with us today. Mr. President, we have had support from the UN Women Parliamentarians, and I want to also recognize those groups who have supported our journey and helped to champion the efforts that have brought us here today. I commend this resolution to the Honorable Senate, and I expect, Mr. President, as I believe my colleagues have indicated over time, that they will support wholeheartedly this effort. I thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. First, I must, it's very obvious that I'm in support of this motion, and obviously must also start off by giving thanks to those who have paved the way to get us to this point, to ensure that our Parliament, that we are able to move forward with this caucus. As a woman parliamentarian in this time, if we were to turn back the hands of time just a few decades, it would not be the numbers that we're seeing today that is represented in both houses of Parliament. And the commitment of this committee or this caucus to ensure networking and solidarity around critical issues relating to women in this country, it goes without saying that there is importance to work and the need to work across party lines. And I, like my colleague Senator Golding, I am aware that and I'm not naive to believe that we will only sing Kumbaya, but in fact that we will work together even where there are differences to ensure at the end of the day that women in this country are properly represented and the issues impacting the lives of women at all levels of our society are addressed in a fulsome way and given the respect that they deserve. I am grateful that I can stand here and work with colleagues on both sides. I consider it not only an honor and privilege, but a duty because of the past that we have all recognized. And so I too commit myself, and especially in a year and in the last quarter, in fact, the last few months, when I have been given an opportunity within Jamaica and outside of Jamaica as a Vital Voices Fellow, which is another group of women across the world who have as their objective the very objective that we're speaking of today, which is to network, to work in solidarity for the cause of women in different areas. I therefore give my support fulsomely to this process and encourage my male counterparts, albeit we have the expectations to have results and positive results, but we are up for the challenge. I look forward to my male colleagues on both sides giving equal commitment to this process to ensure at the end of the day that we are not seeking any special favors, but we are seeking a level playing field to ensure that what needs to be done is done. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much.
Mr. President, You know, when I was about to stand up, Senator Fraser Binns gestured at me to make my presentation brief and short. Can you imagine Senator Fraser Binns saying that? And then again, when it comes to women issues, you don't want to have any shortcomings. Mr. President, when this matter first came to the Parliament, as its intention to have this women caucus established, I supported it wholeheartedly. I believe that a women caucus across party lines is a positive step and direction for our political machinery. Mr. President, it is the purpose of it is to establish what I consider providing peer support to foster positive legislative framework, positive policy suggestions and agenda, and this grouping is expected and anticipated to engage in a wide range of activities. It's an awesome responsibility to be able to come together as a women caucus and to extend itself to deliberate and engage in a wide range of activity, including, gathering data to inform the policies, to do research, to create partnership, because it is not intended in my mind for this women's caucus to be confined to the parliamentarians alone, but to extend itself to the voice of others outside of Parliament who may have interested concerns in supporting this initiative. So it's a broad focus outside of just parliamentarians. Mr. President, it also has to facilitate public discussions, public engagement, getting those on the outside the opportunity to participate and to become actively involved. I'm interested, Mr. President, in the question of, what was mentioned about raising awareness. Raising awareness and the public education campaign around issues that affect women in society. Because we have a gap and an imbalance in terms of understanding the awareness around issues like gender-based violence, issues in the workplace around health and safety. These are matters that require discussion, require research, and this particular grouping set together can emphasize and promote this engagement. One of the critical things in my mind that is always going to be important is the networking. Learning from others outside, getting their own experience, because you can't do it alone. And so when Senator Janice Allen asks for the support of the male counterpart, I am offering myself to extend support as a trade unionist. Mr. President, the mentoring is important because those on the outside, young women looking on, wanting to aspire to become parliamentarians, this is an opportunity to ensure that engagement and that participation going forward. When you speak about legislations, there's a particular legislation that since 1979, it has gone on leave, the Maternity Leave Act. It has not been examined, looked at, and I'm calling on this particular caucus to ensure that it is a priority on the agenda for review. I'm asking and I'm submitting to the caucus that part of your priority in terms of legislation legislative agenda is to examine that. In the public sector, the government would have already expanded the need of improvement in the maternity leave arrangement for public sector workers. And that was as a result of debates and discussions with the trade unions. But we are going way beyond that in terms of not only confining it to maternity leave, but there's a call now for paternity leave, parental leave, and adoption leave. And so we must broaden the scope of what you would call the paternalistic agenda. And what better way to do that than through this particular caucus? So, Mr. President, in closing, I'm in support of the motion. I'm in support of the objective. And I think we need to get the work started because there's a great deal of work to be done. May it please you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much.
Mr. President, my friend Kavon Gale has learned the art that you don't have to be everlasting to be eternal. And I think your submissions, if I may call them that, were quite effective and resonated well with me. Mr. President, I really want to briefly state publicly my support for this bill. And I have some thoughts in my head I want to share. But for this motion, but as Senator Gale was speaking, you may have seen me on my phone taking a quick call. And that was because when I realized that the debate is taking place today, my son needs to be picked up at midday, and I'm making an arrangement for somebody to pick up my son because school closes at 12. That is the reality of women. And it, in my mind, confirms why a bicameral system as this is timely. If there is ever a time in the history of Jamaica that we need women from across the aisle working together, Senator Gordon Campbell, it is now. There are so many issues that affect women and go way beyond color. We can talk about climate change. We know women and children, for example, are some of the most affected and vulnerable because of climate change. As a mother, and those of us who are mothers, particularly who became mother while being in the politics, will understand the challenge. We don't have maternity leave, and that's the reality. So you have to kind of game and do what you have to do and come to the parliament, play your role, and then run back home to baby. 1-month-old baby, weeks even. It is the reality. But this is not something that we talk about, really. And I believe that a bicameral team like this will bring some of those issues to the fore, but not just bring them to the fore, but will also ensure that practical things are done to address them. Some time ago in my State of the Nation, I spoke about the fact that so many women, even with insurance, still have to find money out of their pocket to pay for their prenatal and their hospitalization period, because it's not really covered. It is seen as a pre-existing condition. These are some of the things, among others, that we will have to treat with. And I know that this committee, my dear Senator, Ronnie said me to repeat it, but I do know that this committee is up to the task. Mr. President, I too am very keen to see the work that we're doing. I remember sitting in that Zoom meeting that was arranged with little notice, but as Minister Grange said, and I really want to just stop and give her my own commendation because she has really committed herself. She has literally thrown herself into this. And it doesn't matter what she was doing, she committed to it and she did it. And certainly from this side, we want to commend her. And this is a milestone moment for all, not just women, but for all of Jamaica. But I remember sitting in the committee meetings and hearing the discussion and the views of my sisters on both sides. And I felt that here you have a grouping of ladies who are truly Jamaican first. They didn't see PMP, they didn't see JLP. They saw themselves as having a role to advance Project Jamaica.
And that's what I liked about it. And not only that, but they also were able to share their views. You never necessarily have to agree, but we're able to share views, Shireen, and say, but I'm thinking about this. And sometimes, I remember at one point, Senator Gordon Campbell, you had to rewind and come again and said, on further consideration, I am thinking. And I believe that is the beauty that this committee offers. And I know, Mr. President, that there is so much more that we will do, and Jamaica will only be better for it. I want to say one word to our male colleagues, because there tend to be a thinking, and regrettably so, that where women come together, that it is anti-male. And I say regrettably because the truth is that the advancement of women does not mean the demotion of men. I believe that when we advance our women, we are strengthening our partners, and two partners can only make for a stronger team. And so for all our male colleagues in here and outside of the Parliament, and indeed all Jamaican males, I want you to see this as an opportunity to work with our women so that all Jamaica can shine. And so, Mr. President, I want to say that I speak for all the women on my side, that we stand in full support of this motion, and we stand ready to do our part in advancing the welfare of not just our women and our children, but for all of Jamaica, if it pleases you. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Fraser-Binns. Senator Longmore.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in full support of this motion. I took some time to process how important this motion is today and for me to make a contribution here for the record. You know, this journey started, if I may say, from our ancestry of Nanny of the Maroons, of that generational burn that women have to see to the betterment of not just themselves, but their families and those that are in their care. We have seen the work of Madame Rose Leon, our own Minister Babsy Grange. Madame Rose Leon was the first member of Parliament to have sat on both sides of the houses and to have been a minister on both sides of the houses. Sorry, both sides of the aisle, sorry. And that has not been replicated by anyone else so far. Minister Carl Samuda has been minister only on one side of the aisle. Madame Rose Leon was a minister on both sides of the aisle. Minister on both sides of the aisle. And Minister Carl Samuda has only been, he has been MP on both sides, but minister on both sides? I stand corrected. Right, well, I'll stand for the clarity. The cabinet minister, I have to show the female prowess, even in that space, on both sides of the aisle. And that, Mr. President, I think is something that sets the precedence of the women in our political structure. Mr. President, I also have to recognize our own Minister Babsy Grange, not just for charting this piece of legislation to this point, but she was the one who allowed me to wear a pantsuit in Parliament. She passed that motion allowing and seeking for women to wear pantsuits in Parliament. And I think that is something I certainly celebrate. Mr. President, I have to recognize the work. I have to recognize the work of our own Valerie Curtis, Mrs. Curtis. Thank you, Mrs. Curtis. and your team, Ms. Well, she commands herself as such. And of course, Tracy Cohen, who is the gender focal point here in Parliament. These ladies have spent long hours, tedious hours, working through this piece of legislation with myself initially and with Minister Grange also. I personally played my part, and I thank Minister Kamina Johnson-Smith for having appointed me as a Parliamentary rep in 2016 to have passed on the mantle of handling the gender agenda in the Senate and allowing me to pursue that and following on her groundwork with that establishment of Parliamentarians. That establishment, and I must now thank Alicia Todd, who is the Executive Director for Parliamentarians, and she has charted not just a gender caucus in Jamaica, but also in other Caribbean countries, and is seeking to do so throughout Latin America. Mr. President, that is a champion for parliamentary procedures and open parliamentary networks, and I must thank her. Mr. President, it was in, I think, 2017 that MP Paul Will and I, along with Ms. Cohen, traveled to Ottawa. And that was when the prospect of a gender caucus for Jamaica was appreciated. Senator Gale, you indicated your willingness as a man to participate actively in this process. Mr. Paul Will, MP Paul Will, is there with you, and I will speak that with him. Because from then, we recognize that the work of our women is made best with the support of our men.
All right.
And Mr. President, I implore us to appreciate that when we speak of women's issues, many of our households are heralded by single mothers, of which I am one. And I can speak to gender issues in a way that there is an understanding of the needs and the wants for opportunities that our women deserve. Many of our women carry Jamaica on their backs. And whatever I can do, or this Parliament can do, to support such, I am always in support. Mr. President, you know, I remember when UNAIDS was collaborating with Parliamentarians. It was one of those times when I was fighting another battle. And I made sure I wore my hair out today, because at that time when I stood to support that effort, I didn't have any hair. And it was a matter that it was so important that in the midst of going through treatment, I sought to ensure that that collaboration happened for us, hopefully, to get here today. And I am very glad I made that sacrifice. The issues that women face, if I were to break it down, if there is one single solution, we might not say money can buy happiness, but it can make you comfortable in your misery. And my thing is, at the end of the day, if you give a woman financial independence, you give her choice. And my commitment for the work of this caucus is to ensure as much as possible we champion for the financial opportunities that can be provided through the many arms of government, and might I say, especially agriculture, for our women. Why I say especially agriculture, because agriculture for me is therapeutic in many, many ways, and there are significant opportunities that could be had there. But financial independence for women means opportunities for our families, opportunities for the children that they oftentimes have to care for alone, and offers opportunities for choice. I will close, Mr. President, with another little personal note, that for the first 10 years of my life, I woke up every day wishing I was a boy. Every single day. I was a big tomboy. Why? Because tomboy. I was the sibling of an older brother. And even from then, I had this concept that life was easier and more provisions were made for a boy. I give thanks now, and probably since my 11th birthday, that I was a girl, because then I started to appreciate the unique value of being a woman. I give thanks for the parents that did not see.
Senator Graham, please continue, Senator Long.
I give thanks for the parents that did not see a division of my role and my opportunities that should be afforded to me based on my gender. And I hope that the work of this caucus will see to such opportunities for all Jamaican girls. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Just to indicate that I will not be recognizing Senator Bram in this debate. Senator Morris?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. President. I rise to make my contribution briefly to the debate on this motion. And in doing so, there are 2 points that I want to raise because, you know, Senator Longmore in her presentation highlighted some outstanding Jamaican women who have contributed to the development of our country through the Parliament. And it is very unfortunate that the Most Honorable Portia Simpson-Miller, the first and only female Prime Minister of Jamaica, was never mentioned in her list.
Mr. President.
Sorry, Senator Morris.
I sincerely apologize for that. I definitely had it on my paper, but I was on the floor.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Senator Morris. Thank you for bringing that to our attention.
So, Madam Portia Simpson-Miller was the first and the only female Prime Minister of Jamaica. And I am certain that we all know the journey that she had to travel to reach that lofty destination of becoming the first female Prime Minister of Jamaica, the first president of a major progressive political organization in Jamaica, and one of the longest serving female parliamentarians in our country. And I want to, and certainly the entire Senate should salute her for those tremendous achievements as an outstanding female.
And Senator Morris, you failed to recognize that one time Time Magazine involved as Time Magazine top.
Yes.
Oh, you're coming to that?
Yeah, well, you're
no
preemptive.
Man, forget that
you're
one.
preemptive. Because she was ranked amongst the 100 most influential females across the world. I think it was 2015 that ranking came out in Time Magazine. and a number of other international accomplishments that she has had. And, you know, you mentioned, you interjected in the conversation, Mr. President, because you wanted us to remember as well that you had contested her and lost significantly in one of the national elections.
I keep telling people that in that election, both of us were so loved by the electorate that 103% of them voted, which I think really showed how much both of us
Mr. President,
were loved.
Mr. President, I allow you to
before you go any further, let me just say that she's a lady that I have the highest regard and respect for. And we have, in fact, remained friends over the years.
All right, Mr.
And she remains in my thoughts at all times.
And so we salute her and all the females who, you know, make tremendous contribution to the development of our country. I dare say that our female, not just parliamentarians, are the backbone of the Jamaican society. Mr. President, the second point that I want to raise, and it's relating to procedure, because you indicated before the debate started that we are going to be closing the debate and moving into the Standing Orders Committee to consider the matter and reconvene the Senate. And I'm wondering, Mr. President, why are we adopting that approach? What is the urgency for that? Because I just got this motion today. The notice was sent out this week. But in terms of the motion itself, I just got it this morning. And you will recall, Mr. President, that in the last debate, I had raised some issues which, you know, some individuals asked me for in this honorable chamber. But thankfully, you sought and got a report, guidance from the Attorney General / Solicitor General's chamber. And I would have wanted, Mr. President, before I go into the Standing Orders Committee, to get the opportunity to review all of these documents. I mean, I don't see why is it that we are going to be pushing through this and go for the Standing Orders Committee to rush the thing. And then I urge, Mr. President, that we get the opportunity to do a review properly of the requisite documents, and we convene next week and just deal with the matter. You know, I mean, there is no harm that is going to be done to that. It's not that I am opposing the motion, Senator Golding Campbell. I want to make sure that I'm able to cross-reference, cross-match what is taking place with this resolution plus other documents that were circulated based on the last debate that we had in this honorable chamber. So that's all I'm asking for, Mr. President, that we, instead of moving into the Standing Orders Committee today, that we get the opportunity to review the document and then consider it next week and just have it approved thereafter. May it please.
Thank you, Dr. Morris. Your inquiries were directed to me, but I think the leader of government business is the person.
Thank you, Mr. President. Much appreciated.
And I now recognize you, Minister.
Thank you. I will be very brief, but I could never allow a motion like this to be taken without saying just a few words. as I think about the progression of Jamaica's democracy and the fact that it's 79 years ago, 1944, Jamaica was one of the first states in the world to grant its citizens universal suffrage, the right to vote. Women without any limitations on payment of tax, on ownership of property, on marital status. All citizens, once they were 21 and older, were given granted the right to vote. And this is something of which I think Jamaicans should be just deeply proud of, because it shows the outsized and visionary approach to democracy that we have always had. And it was in that first year of universal adult suffrage that Iris Collins was elected the very first female member of Parliament. 1944, pardon me? Northwest St. James, yes, Senator Charles. And when you think about the path that has been traveled since then, I think that the establishment of this caucus, a bicameral caucus, bipartisan or multi-party caucus, given this, that it is drafted in a way to allow for the expansion of the traditional dual-party system. And I can't help but feel proud that we are here, not only with expanding numbers, but able to recognize the steps being taken to deepen our democracy. I view these matters in the context also, of course, of international affairs, and recognizing that as we seek to achieve the SDGs and note Sustainable Development Goal 5, which is gender equality, the type of representation that is provided by women, and rights are eroded elsewhere in the world, and we see rights being strengthened here, with even starting with the public sector leading the way in terms of maternity leave and the family leave, that is the adoption and paternity leave. That's how it started with equal pay as well. We started with pre-independence, Bustamante's announcement of equal pay within the public service, and then equal pay was then legislated later in the 1970s. So it's important for governments to lead, and it's important for parliaments to lead. And the role that we take on, the duty, indeed, as Senator Allen said, will be to not only have the tough conversations, have the easy conversations, but to engage the population, to widen understandings, to have women and girls and men and boys more understand the value that diverse opinions bring to leadership, and the importance of being able to see yourself and your children being able to see themselves in leadership in order to condition their minds as to the options that are available for them. And our ability to collaborate and our ability to work through difficult issues will be a part of that positive message to Jamaica and to our Jamaican children in particular about how it is we work through difficult issues and conflicts, which is a general problem that we have as a society. So I want to just say that the importance of this step should not be understated and cannot be understated. It's a major step forward for us in terms of our parliamentary governance and the deepening of our democracy. And I think that it would be difficult to list all of the women, and Dr. Longmore, even as you went through your list, you managed to leave out one major one, but there are so many. The truth is that there are so many Sharon Robinson, there is, the head of the Bureau of Gender Affairs has really done yeoman service in driving this process, supporting Minister Grange and ensuring that the issues of gender are addressed in the most holistic way possible. and she's been a true stalwart in this fight. But in terms of the, absolutely, but it would be beyond me to list all of the members of parliament who have made their mark on this great nation of ours. And so I won't try today, but we will have opportunities in the future. I want to really just express appreciation to Dr. Longmore as well, because as she speaks to her, her role in the birth of this concept and its manifestation in Jamaica today, I imagine she must feel quite emotional about its coming to fruition. And I want to commend her on her work in this regard, and for her gracious remarks of appreciation today. I'm sure the Parliamentary team, who always spoke so very highly of you, will be pleased to know that they have been entered in the Hansard, that they have been recognized. Alicia in particular will be very pleased to know that she has been entered into the annals of history within the Hansard of this honorable chamber. Mr. President, in terms of the practical matter of the timing today, it would be remiss of me to say that I really regret that Senator Scott Motley is not here today, because when we had first tabled the motion, or rather placed it on the agenda and circulated the documentation for it when we sat 2 weeks ago, it had been intended for us to take it then, but she had asked that we delay it because she had an appointment and she wanted to participate in the debate. And so it was with deep regret that I received her apologies for absence today, as she's indisposed, because it meant that we had to go forward without her. And the sad thing about it in terms of the practicality, normally I'd be more than happy to concede in terms of timing, to submit the matter to standing orders and then take another week for us to take the report. But there is a conference that is being planned for the 12th of July, and the timing, given the of the establishment, will be impacted. I had promised Minister Grange that, as we had not taken it 2 weeks ago, that we would ensure that the business would be done today. This process has been followed before by the Senate and by the lower house without controversy. The amendments proposed for the terms of reference have been scrutinized, and they have been brought into alignment with the amendments that were made by the Standing Orders Committee of that other place, so that there is consistency in the language. The issues are not controversial, and we would ask that while the original motion on this matter was mired in some controversy, that we not allow that to take place today. The issues before us are not contentious. The matters are clear, collaborative, engaging, and inclusionary. And to seek to delay is not, I would think, not the best approach on this particular matter at this time. So I'm asking for the cooperation of the opposition on this matter, and that we proceed on this historic day to complete the work so that we can take forward the issue of planning for the conference scheduled for week after next. I thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, one thing. Mr. President, if I may just...
Thank you very much, Minister. Senator Fraser.
Just for clarification, it's not that Senator Scott Motley can't be here today. She's truly ill and is not in a position to be outside. So her absence here today is most regrettable, and she has sent her apology as well. So I just want our listeners and the senators in here to understand that the nature of her illness is such that it would not be appropriate for her to be here. Thank you.
Senator Bunting, you're walking into dangerous territory. The two ladies are talking and you want to interrupt them. Yes, Senator Scott Motley's absence is noted, and I had indicated, maybe it was elsewhere, but I had indicated that we were informed that she was not well, and if possible, she would have joined virtually. Senator Bunting.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I'm disappointed in the response from the leader of government business to Senator Floyd Morris's request, which is a very reasonable request. And I'm really not sure that even with a conference on the 12th, if we have a standing order committee next week and pass the motion next week at our regular sitting, that would not still catch the agenda, or the timing rather, of the 12th. But I think it would be very unfortunate and sad if we are here talking about the establishing of a caucus of women parliamentarians with the duty of reviewing legislation, plans and programs from a gender perspective to understand their effect on gender equality, equity and parity, and differential impacts on men and women and boys and girls, and at the same time be doing it in a way that would trample on the rights of those with differing abilities. I think it would be deeply unfortunate. I think it would be deeply unfortunate. This is something that we have raised repeatedly. We have just got the motion this morning. Senator Morris, who is a member of the Standing Orders Committee, would have just received it in a format that he can review a couple minutes. In fact, it may even have been after the start of this sitting. And I don't see it being an unreasonable request to allow him to participate and discharge his duties to this Parliament in an informed manner by allowing him time to review the motion and the amendments that are flowing from it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Senator Golden Campbell.
Mr. President, let me begin closure by thanking my colleagues on both sides for their, where stated, their positive affirmations in respect of this motion. I too, Senator Gale, like Senator Fraser-Binns, your comments in relation to the Maternity Leave Act and the importance of this kind of a legislation coming before this caucus, that too resonated with me as Senator Fraser-Binns shared her juggling her motherly duties and her senatorial duties. I too, on my way down here, had to stop at my children's school to deliver things that they had forgotten that they needed today. And it was after that that my brakes failed me and I crawled very slowly to the Parliament. So we all, you know, as mothers, women who are mothers, have to battle different things, and this caucus is well placed to treat with some of these issues, to bring some awareness and to assist us in looking at national solutions for how we deal with those issues. The collaborative nature of what this caucus must be is going to be the grounding of that, and Senator Allen and Senator Johnson-Smith spoke to that. I'm particularly, though, moved by Senator Dr. Longmore's comments as to the need for us to take a look at the financial independence of women and promoting and improving opportunities for women to be financially independent. And it struck with me a chord in my role as a director of the board at the Development Bank of Jamaica, where we are striving to implement all our ESG goals and so forth, that where I sit as the chair of the Rio Tinto Alcan Legacy Fund, we have had almost zero take-up of the agricultural microloans that fund offers, with an 80% credit guarantee. And it just sort of snapped in my head today that perhaps if we targeted our women farmers and found a mechanism through which to channel that we might have better support. Certainly, I suspect we suffer from perhaps a lack of awareness. So it's something, I thank my colleagues for triggering that thought, and for Senator Longmore for raising that issue. It's something that I will most definitely take to my board and try to have some consultations with our Agriculture Minister. Pat? And fast, and fast, and fast. Mr. President, I thank Senator Johnson-Smith for her reminder to us of where this journey started with the granting of universal adult suffrage in 1944. I myself had not gone back in my mind as far as that, and I certainly know from my own family's perspective the impact that had on women in my family, that I heard my grandmother speak to, my grandaunt speak to, and their own activism at the time that was spurred by the events that took place in Jamaica leading up to that historic moment. We have a serious role to play. We have a great responsibility to ensure that this caucus and the work that we do in this caucus is done in a responsible way, in a transparent way, that we can look at young girls throughout Jamaica and be examples in how we conduct our affairs, in how we deliberate, in how we solve tough problems that we might be on opposite sides of when we begin. And I think that's one of the important lessons that can come from this. I'm constantly hearing about the difficulties that school-age children are having solving disputes in a group setting, and how they reach for more divisive and violent outcomes as opposed to understanding how to sit and really talk through tough issues. So that I hope that when this caucus meets, our public meetings will be viewed by many, and that even some of those difficult times we have in the closed room, that they'll actually see it in open to understand what we mean when we say we have to work through difficult issues. I close, Mr. President. I have to share a story. I recently had the opportunity to attend a training conference put on by the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association in Edmonton, Canada. And without telling tales, there was an exercise where we were in groups dealing with different issues that we were supposed to do an advocacy exercise about. And in my particular group, we were 3 women and 4 men. And the issue we were grappling with was period poverty. And one of the women, a senior member of one of the Canadian Parliament's legislative assemblies, rather, said, you know, it's period poverty. It's a serious issue, and she began to describe what it was about the access to sanitary materials for women, and how many women were unable to access it, and how many women lost work hours, lost attendance at school hours, productivity decreased because they simply were not able to access it. And in the course of the conversation and our discussions about it, one of my gentlemen colleagues looked over at the other 3 gentlemen, and he said, Is that the name of our committee? Is it the Committee on Period Poverty, or should we say feminine products or feminine issues? And all three women looked at each other and looked at the gentleman, and of course it bubbled out of me. I said, no woman talks about her feminine products. We talk about our period. That's the word we use. But so uncomfortable was he with the word. But he looked to the male colleagues to get affirmation of their discomfort, to make a determination. So it was a very subtle issue, but it's one of the things that came to my mind, that if there are issues like that, where we can bring some awareness, where we can say to our society, look, these are things we have to talk about openly. We can't shy from the word. We can't be embarrassed by words, because we have half of our population experiencing whatever it may be. Then that certainly is one of the things that I look forward to this caucus having an impact on. I think, Mr. President, that my leader of government business has dealt with the reason why this matter is so urgent today. And so I do not want to join Senator Bunting on any kind of note of discordance today. Suffice it to say that I'm aware, Mr. President, and I believe you champion that committee, I believe the Standing Orders Committee is in the process of reviewing the standing orders, and they have not gotten to this section of the standing orders yet. So I would imagine that whatever work we do today will be reviewed in the very near future by the Standing Orders Committee, at which time there certainly will be opportunity, if there are further amendments that may be invited, for those amendments to be discussed and channeled in the appropriate way. So I assure my colleague, Senator Dr. Morris, that the moment is not lost. And I ask him to assist us and support us in ensuring that we can move through this today, so that we can prepare for our upcoming conference. And with that, Mr. President, I thank my colleagues for their comments, and I ask, Mr. President, that this motion be approved.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Senator Golden Campbell. The question is that the motion put forward and debated be approved. Those in favor? Against? Minister? I'm sorry, Senator Golden Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, in keeping with Standing Order 74-9B, I now ask that the Senate be suspended to allow the Senate Standing Orders Committee to meet and to consider the matter referred to it.
The question is that the Senate be suspended to allow the Standing Orders Committee to meet and consider the matter referred to. Those in favor?
Just a point before, since it's
Senator Brown.
Yeah. Is it that the Standing Order Committee will be having a new meeting, a second meeting today, or is it that the earlier Standing Order was suspended pending?
It would be a new meeting.
A new meeting, I see.
Members should have heard the question. Those in favor? Against? This Honourable Senate now stands adjourned for this in order to facilitate the meeting of the It actually says suspended here. I'm the one that made the mistake. This Honourable Senate now is suspended in order to facilitate the Standing Orders Committee to meet. All the members have copies of the motion that we are debating? The terms of reference. Thank you, Senator. Sinclair, you want to come and sit down here, sir? This meeting of the Standing Orders Committee of the Honorable Senate is called to order. I take prayers of having been said. We are waiving the minutes, and I have no apologies for absence except from Senator Scott Motley, who may or may not be on Zoom. And the business of this meeting, the second meeting of the Standing Orders Committee for Friday, June 30th, 2023, is to consider a motion to amend the Standing Orders in terms, Fraser Binns, in terms, I know you haven't seen Senator Bryan for a long time, but please pay attention, in terms provided. Senator Sinclair, go ahead, please.
No, I was just asking you to add, Mr. Chairman, that this meeting is convened pursuant to 74(9). Yeah.
Perfectly right. Top of the class. Yes. That's it? That's all you wanted to say? Yeah, so the proposal, members, you see the document in front of you, and the proposal is to add the provision Standing Order 70A. And you see that there, right? And it says the Standing Orders is amended by inserting. So this is what is going to be inserted now, following Standing Order 70 is going to be inserted. What you see on the paper. Senator Longmore, you're looking on your paper? Eh? Come now, everybody needs to get a copy of this, you know. Marshall. Yes, so you see where it says there now 70A. I'm not going to read it, you know, because it has been read elsewhere, but you can peruse it. 70A. Notwithstanding the provision of the Standing Orders, number 66, 3, Sessional Committees, and 73, Joint Select Committees, the Caucus of Women Parliamentarians shall consist of female members of the Senate to sit jointly with female members of the House, and it goes on. So, I'm going to take this as having been read. Can I do this? So I take it as read. And having taken it as read now, I ask for the approval of the committee.
Chairman, if I may through you.
Please.
I do have one amendment to note. In Standing Order 78-2, it says the Caucus of Women Parliamentarians shall have the duty of 70A2. Yes. It says the Caucus of Women Parliamentarians shall have the duty of, and I would suggest it be changed to may, as this was a change that was reflected in the other house. Yes.
So it will read, the Caucus of Women Parliamentarians may.
Yes, Chairman.
And for obvious reasons, those who are acquainted with the interpretation of legislation shall and may have profound differences, right? So that is amended to may. So I'm going to ask that the Standing Orders Committee approve the proposal for the insertion of Standing Order 70A in terms of the document before you. All in favor? Senator Fraser Binns. No, break yourself away from Senator Bramna, man.
Chairman, if I may, because we're looking at it from a different lens, and we were wondering whether 70 is the ideal place, and we're also looking at the word of may vis-a-vis shall. So I was seeking guidance from senior counsel as well as his capacity as former Attorney General to see whether the appropriate word is may or shall in the circumstances.
What is his guidance?
We're still having that discourse, so we have not concluded as yet.
Well, we may have to go ahead with it.
Okay, so I'm going to ask your approval. Those in favor? Against? Ayes have it. I think the appropriate thing now is to adjourn and prepare the report for Parliament. Is that correct? For the Senate? Senator, Ms. Lowe, that's correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
So the Senate will resume while the report is prepared by the committee clerk?
No, the report is going to be compiled now.
Yeah.
Okay, so this meeting of the second meeting of the day of the Standing Orders Committee is adjourned.
Question, when this report is done, it has to be signed off?
Yes.
By all the members
yes.
here? So.
Yes. The draft is going to be circulated. Presently, presumably, it is well on the way to preparation. So this Standing Orders Committee stands adjourned for a date to be fixed.
It's Friday, June 30. In the headlines, new therapeutic center to cater to children in state care. In business news, JSC to launch direct market access to the U.S. by end of June. Regionally, Barbados and region to benefit from Afrexim Bank funds. Internationally, U.S. top court bans colleges from considering race in admissions.